what are we going to see happen in the natural world? And is there any time frame when we're going to see some of the effects of these things happening, or are they already happening?
Well, I mean, if you look at COVID-19, if that's taught us anything, we can move quickly and adapt to change pretty quickly. A number of disruptions that have taken place in technologies over the last decade have proven that we can move and adapt quickly as a society. The challenge we're facing with making peace with nature is that it's global in nature. So it's not going to be solved by any individual. It's not going to be solved by any one country. So the key here is, how quickly can we mobilize as a global community and really work together as, with business, with individuals, with governments to all come together and accelerate that change on a common agenda. It's really up to us on how quickly that time frame will be. But, humanity's at stake. It's our planet that's at stake, and we have to give it our all to get there as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Michael. John, from your perspective, do we see any changes in the timeline, or for you, do you even think it's too late for some of the things we're already seeing now?
Look, it's never too late. It's just a question of degree, isn't it? I mean, at the moment, when it comes to, for example, climate change, we were meant to be on course to roughly halve our emissions by 2030. At the moment, we're on course for our emissions to be increasing by about 16% by 2030. So if you take that, one fact alone in terms of what the world governments, and particularly G20 governments, because really it's G20, it's the 20 biggest countries in the world that are responsible for nearly all of the emissions. If you take those countries, there's a lot of countries that have not put in more ambitious climate proposals. And so that will not meet what was agreed at Paris to stay below 2 degrees and aim for 1.5 degrees. That is unlikely to change. There's a very important meeting coming up to the G20 in Rome, just ahead of the climate summit in Glasgow in November, where world leaders will be gathering, and of course they have a chance to put more ambitious proposals on the table. But as things currently stand, a lot of them haven't, and that's why at the moment we're not doing enough.
I think if you also look at what is happening in terms of subsidising the bad, I would call it, there was a review that came out that the UK government published recently that said between $4 and $6 trillion a year is spent subsidising fossil fuels, subsidising overfishing, and subsidising pesticide use. So all of the things that are leading to climate change and biodiversity loss are being massively subsidised by the world's governments. The amount of money they said that was being put into protecting the environment and conservation was $69 billion, a fraction, a tiny fraction of the $4 to $6 trillion that was going into destroying it. So I think that what governments need to do is just to switch the money from the bad to the good, because the thing is, the money's there. If they're subsidizing it, it means they've got the money. But what needs to happen is the money needs to go in the right direction, not the wrong direction. And today that's even more a doable proposition, because renewable energy, frankly, is cheaper in nearly all cases, everywhere in the world, than fossil fuel power is, and energy. So the thing is, there's really no excuse why the governments are not making this switch in resources towards a renewable energy economy, towards biodiversity protection, both on land and at sea, and why they're not ending these really harmful subsidies, which are underneath it all are destroying life on this planet, not just threatening our life, but threatening the lives of many species. I mean, at the moment, something like 1 million species are threatened with extinction. I mean, it's been called the 6th great mass extinction that's taking place at the moment. But this is so easy to solve. On the time frame that we're talking about, over the next 10 to 20 years, we could quite easily make this shift, make this transition, do it in a socially just way that brings people with us, if the governments themselves, really took this issue seriously and really took responsibility for it.
Thank you so much. I guess we have this grand overview, but do you think that there is any hope left? Does humanity have any hope for change or any hope for reverse for some of the horrible things or the negative effect on the climate?
Well, I think there's plenty of hope. I mean, if you look at today, I mean, sustainability is on the top of the agenda for governments, for brand owners, for consumers. I mean, it's a conversation that we're having. It's not, just something that is a topic for discussion. It's really front and center in everything that folks are doing. But we've got to do more. What gives me also hope is the youth of today. I mean, if you look at the youth, we've got a number of very inspirational leaders, including yourself, that are demanding change, and they have a platform through it with social media in a way that, the world cannot ignore. So that's really encouraging. On the flip side of that, they can't do it by themselves. I mean, another one of the youth, inspiring youth, Shia Bastida, recently said in an interview that, the voices of the young are acted upon by adults. And, that's where we come in. I mean, the business leaders, the politicians, the parents. So, I'm a father of 5, and I can tell you that, my 5 children, they speak out and they want action. And, that's what it's going to be about. It's going to be about all of us actually putting that good money and that good work, the decisions to work to make a difference. So I'm hopeful. But a lot is going to be required to get us there.
Thank you. Ms. Daphney, from your perspective, is there any hope for women and girls, or just generally in terms of climate?
Yes, I fully agree with the notion of the fact that there is hope. It is about what we do and who does it, and how do we work with each other in a coordinated manner. The issue of business leaders, politicians, parents, and again, I go back to community leaders and community. And among those community leaders, it's about ensuring that women and girls are amongst the leadership that we are talking about here. I do want to highlight the fact that having violence, for instance, answers the UN Secretary General's Antonio Guterres' call for increased action through a common agenda. And I think everyone here is talking about a common agenda, is talking about the fact that what we're talking about here affects us at all levels. And therefore, according to the United Nations, the UN Secretary General released our common agenda report earlier this month, which was on the 10th of September 2021. And I'm hoping that this is also a report that we'll be able to use and not keep in our shelves, because there's a lot of work that goes into that, and research especially that goes into that. Among the 12 commitments of the agenda, there's a global call for promoting peace and preventing conflicts. The new agenda for peace urges for reshaped responses to all forms of violence and calls for investment in prevention and peace building.